Okay guys, it's me again. Now, I hope you like the hat. It was weaved for my mother many years ago, and she's given it to me to wear. So it's the new me, if you like. Anyway, I've driven from Nandi to Cuvu. Cuvu is in the district of Nadroga. I've driven along the Queen's Road. It's a beautiful drive, and I've driven along the Coral Coast. The Coral Coast is a very important area for tourism in Fiji. This is where a lot of the hotels are located. Anyway, that's not what I've come to talk to you about. I came here, just opposite me, over in that direction, is the Fijian hotel, the Shangri-La Fijian Hotel at Yanuza. Yanuza is the name of the island. Now, I came here a couple of days ago because I wanted to vlog about St. Patrick's Day in Fiji, and I thought it'd be a funny vlog, who thinks of St. Patrick's Day in Fiji, but I thought this would make a very cheeky vlog. So I came here, and I got here, I drove across to the island, and the security guard didn't know that there was a St. Patrick's Day event being held at the hotel there, at the Shangri-La Hotel. And everybody seemed a bit nonplussed about what was going on, and the cover charge was $50. Not that it was important, but I kind of stood back and I thought to myself, I'm not really about hotels. My vlog isn't about hotels. I don't feel comfortable in hotels. I like telling the real story of Fiji. I like being out here in, amongst the people in villages. So I stood back for a minute and I thought to myself, there's a story here that I've known about for some time, and I thought, why don't I tell that story? And the story is of Cuvu village in that direction, and there is another village in that direction, Rukurukulevu, that I'll tell you about as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, welcome back guys. Now I'm in the heart of Cuvu village. It's quite a large area, the Cuvu village, but this is the actual heart, the dead centre of Cuvu village. And in the rest of Fiji they say Bula, but here in Nadroga, in the province of Nadroga, they use the Nadroga dialect and they say Thola instead of Bula. So Thola to all you guys out there. Anyway, so I'm in the village and let me just give you a bit of a backstory. When my parents first moved back to Fiji many years ago, this road just over here was the old Queen's Road, and I remember we used to drive along this road. And we used to drive past this burial mound. This burial mound is called a Sao Tambu. It's a chiefly burial mound and it's higher than any other burial in the village because it's a chiefly burial mound. And you can see the chief's grave at the top. And that grave is the grave of Ratu Kini Nanovo. Now I'll come back to who Ratu Kini Nanovo was in a minute, but anyway, we used to drive past this village and I used to be absolutely fascinated by this burial mound because, Buddha, how are you? I used to be absolutely fascinated by this burial mound. Anyway, Ratu Kini Nanovo was one of the signatories to the deed of cession in 1874, the deed of cession whereby Fiji was given with love, as it's understood by Fijians. Fiji was given with love to Great Britain and especially to Queen Victoria. So that's that chap there. He was one of the original signatories. He was an ally of Ratu Epenisa Dakumbau, who he claimed to be the chief, the king of Fiji, and Ratu Dakumbau and Ratu Kini were very good allies. Ratu Kini is referred to as the Ka'alevu. Now the Ka'alevu means that he was the paramount chief of this whole province of Nadroga, and so that's his burial mound there. So every time we used to drive past, I used to be absolutely gripped by the sight of that burial mound because it was just intriguing. I needed to find out more, and as I found out more, I was more, my curiosity grew, and so I started reading about Fiji's history, and so yeah, so that's that guy there. This guy was a staunch ally of Dakumbau, as I just said a few moments ago, and when Fiji became a British colony in 1874, the first governor Arthur Gordon, came to this village in 1876. He was conducting a series of wars with certain tribes along the Singatoka River and in the hills in the distance there, and he was conducting that war to subdue these tribes. These tribes didn't recognise the authority of Dakumbau. Dakumbau claimed he was king of Fiji in 1871, but these guys, they said, oh no, we don't recognise his authority. And then when Fiji was made a British colony in 1874, again, they didn't accept that Britain was the ruler of Fiji. So Governor Arthur Gordon came to this village. This village, as I said, was an ally of Dakumbau, and it was an ally by default now of the British Empire. And so Dakumbau came here, was very pleased with the support that was given to him by Ratu Kini, but Governor Gordon came here, and they managed to subdue the tribes out in the hills and along the Singatoka River, and they brought them to this village. And the leaders were either hanged or shot, and the rest of the villagers were sent sent to other villages in the area. And so that was the way it was summary justice. That was what British colonial rule was like at the time. It was quite ruthless. So don't get any false impressions that the British Empire was some benign empire. You know, it was quite ruthless, and it was certainly ruthless back in the 1870s, and especially during the what was referred to as the Little Wars, carried out by Governor Gordon. Anyway, so that is the Sao Tambu of Ratu Kini Nanobo. Now there is a further story to this, and it concerns the island of Yanuza. But I'll come back to that story in a minute. But I just wanted to add, I was going to cover this story last week, but I met this lovely guy in the village. His name is Luke. I was introduced to his family. I met his brother Abraham, and we ended up having a kava session for about 2 hours. And when you have a kava session, you become very relaxed, and you talk about, you know, you have what's referred to as a talanoa, and you just forget about the rest of the world. You become very relaxed. So that was why I wasn't able to complete this vlog last week. So I've come back a few days later to finish it. But we'll carry on in a few moments. How are you, dear? All right? Oh, this is fascinating for me, you know? This is absolutely, I love all this, you know?
So in our custom, before they serve the grog,
yes.
In our custom we have to do it like the clap 3 times and then
serve.
And then
okay,
serve.
Okay.
You are our guest, so you'll drink first.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Wow, isn't that just magnificent? This is the view from Cuvu Beach, and as I wander along the beach, I think about those lines from Wordsworth. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by a sight so touching in its majesty. Yes, it certainly is very beautiful out here on Cuvu Beach. You can see the reef, or at least the surf breaking on the reef over in the distance. So this whole area is just basically a lagoon, and the water is just so clear and beautiful. This beach is pristine, absolutely pristine, except for this really annoying thing. And that annoyance to me is the rubbish. There is a bit of rubbish over there, discarded beer cans, food wrappings, the odd opened tin of sardines. I mean, why would you want sardines in Fiji when you've got all this ocean you can go fishing? But yeah, an open tin of sardines with a jagged edge. So you want to be careful where you're stepping. So what I've done is I've put my shoes back on. I was barefoot a few moments ago, but I put my shoes back on. I'm just here, just taking in this exquisite view. It's so peaceful. If this was a beach in Europe or in North America or, you know, just about anywhere else in the world, it would be absolutely crowded. And it's like this on any day of the week. You can come here, you can just chill out, and you can do your own thing, and you won't be bothered by the crowds. You just hear the gentle lapping of the water along the shore, and the murmur of the wind, and that sound in the distance. I don't know if you can quite pick it out, but there is a sound, a hum in the distance, and that's the sound of the surf breaking along the reef. You can see those rollers over there. They're not especially big, but they are quite big. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk to you about was part 2 of the story of the village of Cuvu, Rukurukulevu, and the island of Yanuza. This is the bit where the island comes in. And back in 1865, Rukurukulevu, in inverted quotation marks, sold Yanuza Island for a pittance. He just got a couple of muskets, some powder kegs, and a few useless trinkets, and probably some rum and some brandy or whatever it was. And he sold those 130 acres of pristine land on that island, and it's an absolutely wonderful island. He sold that island to a European settler, or a European seaman who was able to provide him with guns and the rest of the consideration for the purchase of the island. Anyway, so he sold the island, and that kind of exemplified how Fiji became a British colony. Vakambao had tried to establish his dominion over Fiji. He proclaimed himself King of Fiji in 1871, but the reality on the ground was that he didn't have control of the country. There were lots of Fijian tribes and villages who just wouldn't accept his authority. So he set up his own government, consisting of Europeans and a British colonial administrator by the name of Thurston, and he just proclaimed himself King of Fiji in 1871. But he was aware, he had the Europeans on his side. He did actually engage in a couple of wars, most notably in Ra, which I covered in one of my early vlogs, the Battle of Nakoro out in Ra, near the village of Draunivi. And so Vakambao was conscious of the fact he had Europeans in his would-be government. He proclaimed himself King of Fiji, and he had an ally in Rukurukulevu, the Cuvu, the paramount chief of this province of Nadroga. And he was conscious of a contradiction. He had Europeans in his cabinet, in his government, but he knew that Europeans were coming, and when I say Europeans, I'm talking about people not from Europe, obviously. These are mainly people of British stock, for the most part, from Australia, New Zealand, America, from Great Britain, and they were coming here and they were buying vast tracts of land for next to nothing. No, Fijian chiefs needed guns. They were fighting against other tribes in Fiji, and they needed guns, and so these Europeans would come here. I mean, they weren't always trading land for guns, for muskets. But it was a very unfair bargain. Fijian chiefs were handing over land, and Vakambao was conscious of this contradiction, that he was using Europeans to establish himself as King of Fiji, but he knew they were taking up a lot of land and they were getting it for next to nothing, and which was very unfair. So that's where Yanuza comes into the story. Rukurukulevu sold the land, but by an extraordinary set of circumstances, it came back into the ownership of Rukurukulevu, and the people, I've got to be careful, the tide's coming in. It came back into the ownership of Rukurukulevu and the people of Cuvu and the greater area of the province of Nadroga, and so now that island is owned by the Cuvu, the paramount chief of Nadroga. So, you know, it's come full circle, you know. But it kind of, what it does illustrate is the situation Fiji was in back in the 1850s, 60s and 70s until it became a British colony in 1874. You know, when it became a colony, Lalo spoke some very telling words. He said that it is in the nature of Fijians to give when asked. And he said that if it hadn't been for Fiji becoming a British colony, Fijians would have faced annihilation because they were just giving away their land for next to nothing. And so, you know, Lalo was part of that process whereby land was being lost by Fijians, but he also recovered the situation by making Fiji a British colony. So that's Yanuza in a nutshell. Yanuza was part of that unfair transaction. It's now back in the hands of the paramount chief. But yeah, that's what makes this whole area. You know, you can just see worlds colliding in the village. You've got the old world of pre-colonial Fiji. You've got the burial mound that we saw of Rukurukulevu, the Cuvu, the paramount chief of this province. And you've got the fact that Governor Arthur Gordon came here to launch his what was referred to as little wars against the people of this area. You know, the highlands of the inland part of Nadroga and along the Singatoka River. So all that kind of coalesces, and you know, it's sort of, you know, all that is brought to my mind whenever I drive past this village. Of course, I don't drive past it nowadays because the main Queen's Road is on the other side. But when I was a boy, I was curious about the history of that Sao Tambu, that chiefly burial mound of Rukurukulevu. I found it fascinating that his grave should be on this hilltop, this small hillock. But that was the whole tradition of Fijian chiefs, and it's still quite true today. You know, there are other burial mounds around Fiji, and even the chief's house is on a hilltop. The current chief lives on a hill over there in the distance, and it's the highest point of the village of Cuvu. So there you have it. That's Cuvu for you. But last and not least, there's something else I wanted to say very quickly, and that is this whole area is full of traditions and stories. You know, each village, there are a number of villages along this area. They come under the province, but Cuvu is the main village, and it's the chiefly village. But all these other villages along the way have all these stories about mysterious powers in catching fish, or about being the armed escort of the Cuvu, the paramount chief of Fiji, of Nadroga. So there are all these traditions and stories, you know, and if you happen to be a tourist and you want to, you know, if you're not just keen to lie on a beach somewhere or go out snorkeling, if you want to hear some of the stories of Fiji, come to one of these villages and you'll be richly entertained. All you have to do is bring some kava and present it in a ceremonial way. You'll sit around with some of the elders in the village. They'll tell you wonderful stories of the village and of Fiji and of the history of the area. You can't ask for more in life than to be richly entertained by these people in these villages. just the stories are just staggeringly beautiful and so entertaining. But there you have it. Now I want to take you to this other village now. The last village on the other side. It's on the other side from Cuvu, and it holds a personal story for me. So let's get going. Okay, so this is the other reason I wanted to come to this village. This is the grave of a very good friend of mine, Wilisoni Kurisangila, who was at university with me, and I also knew him in London. He died very young, a couple of years ago, in 2015. He was a lawyer and a very close friend. I can still, after all these years, I can still hear his laughter at the residential college we both stayed at in Tasmania. You could walk past his room and you could hear the loud peals of his laughter. It was so infectious. And he died sadly very young. He was working as the assistant DPP, the assistant director of public prosecutions in Nauru, when he suffered, so far as I know it, so far as I've been told, he suffered a heart attack and had a car accident and died. So this is his grave, very sad. This is the other reason I'm here. This is the other village I wanted to visit, I should say. And so I came here last Saturday. It was quite emotional, but I thought I'd come back again as I was in the area to pay my last respects to Wilisoni. And remember that man who was a gentle giant. Wilisoni was a gentle giant. He was well over 6 feet tall, very sturdily built, but the perfect gentleman. And so after visiting Cuvu, having visited Cuvu, the village of Cuvu, this is the other reason I wanted to come here. That's the other reason why I didn't want to go out to St. Patrick's Day on Yanuza Island, on the Fijian, the Shangri-La Fijian resort. That was the other reason. I wanted to do that story about Cuvu village, and also wanted to pay my respects in this village to Wilisoni. And so, until we next meet, Wilisoni, farewell, my friend. Farewell.